The private helicopter sliced through the morning air above the emerald fields of Oak Ridge County, its rhythmic chopping a jarring intrusion on the pastoral landscape below. Inside, Julian Thorne adjusted his custom Patek Philippe watch, the timepiece's value exceeding what most locals earned in 5 years. At 34, Julian had built Thorne Industries into a technology empire valued at just over $11 billion. But this morning, his mind wasn't on stock prices or board meetings. "Mr. Thorne, we'll land in 5 minutes," his pilot announced, through the headset. Julian merely nodded, his steel blue eyes scanning the rolling countryside. This was the last piece of the puzzle. 3,000 acres of pristine farmland strategically positioned for his most ambitious project yet. Thorne Vista, a luxury residential development that would transform this sleepy region into an exclusive escape for the ultra-wealthy. Only one property stood in his way, the Miller farm. The stubborn owners had rejected 3 increasingly generous offers. Julian didn't particularly enjoy manipulation, but business was business, and he hadn't built his empire by accepting no for an answer. His plan was simple: a week posing as a simple businessman seeking rural inspiration, enough time to identify the farm's vulnerabilities and the Miller family's pressure points. Every business deal was ultimately about psychology, and Julian excelled at reading people. The helicopter descended onto a private landing pad at the Oak Ridge Inn, where the manager waited, practically vibrating with excitement to welcome the secret VIP guest whose team had quietly booked the entire East Wing. 20 miles away, Olivia Miller was having the morning from hell. At 29, she had abandoned a promising career in agricultural science to return home when her father suffered a stroke 2 years earlier. Now she balanced running their family's century-old farm with caring for him. A juggling act that felt impossible on days like today. "Damn it," she cursed as her ancient pickup truck sputtered to a stop on the side of the road, steam billowing from under the hood. She was already late for a meeting with her lawyer about these mysterious offers to buy the farm, offers that had started reasonable and grown increasingly difficult to refuse. Rain began to fall as Olivia checked her phone. No signal. Perfect, she'd have to walk to town. Grabbing her father's old brown leather jacket from the passenger seat, she stepped out into the drizzle just as a sleek black Aston Martin roared around the curve, sending a wave of muddy water directly onto her jeans and white blouse. The car screeched to a halt 50 feet ahead, and Olivia stalked toward it, fury radiating from every step. The driver's door opened, and a tall figure emerged. Designer suit, perfectly coiffed dark hair, and a face that belonged on magazine covers. "I'm so terribly sorry," Julian said, his practiced smile faltering slightly at the intensity of the woman's glare. "Please allow me to—" "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Olivia interrupted, gesturing to her mud-splattered clothes. Julian reached for his wallet. "I'd be happy to cover any cleaning expenses." "I don't need your money," she snapped, then paused, looking at his car. "But I do need a ride into town. My truck broke down." Something about her directness caught Julian off guard. Women in his world rarely spoke to him with such unfiltered honesty. They wanted something. His money, his connections, his influence. This mud-splattered woman just wanted a ride, and somehow, that was refreshing. "Of course," he said, opening the passenger door with an uncharacteristic gesture of servitude. "I'm Julian, by the way." "Olivia Miller," she replied curtly, sliding into the leather seat without concern for the upholstery. "And you're going to help me fix my truck too, since you're partly responsible for my terrible morning." As Julian settled into the driver's seat, he felt an unexpected spark of interest. Olivia Miller, the very obstacle to his plans, had just landed in his lap, and she had no idea who he really was. What Julian didn't realize as he pulled away was that the name Thorne had registered immediately with Olivia. She'd spent weeks researching the company behind the offers for her farm. This arrogant city slicker had just made a critical error. He'd revealed himself to his enemy, and Olivia Miller was not one to waste an opportunity. The antiquated charm of Oak Ridge's main street was a far cry from the steel and glass canyons Julian typically navigated. As they pulled up to the town's only law office, Julian found himself oddly reluctant to end their drive. Olivia's passionate defense of sustainable farming practices had been unexpectedly enlightening, and her intelligence impossible to ignore. "Thanks for the ride," Olivia said, reaching for the door handle. "Now about my truck. I have some calls to make, but I can meet you." "After your appointment," Julian offered, surprising himself with his sincerity. "I know a thing or two about engines." Olivia raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Those hands look like they've never seen a wrench." "Appearances can be deceiving," Julian replied with a hint of challenge in his voice. "I worked my way through college in an auto shop." It wasn't entirely a lie. He had indeed worked briefly at a high-end restoration garage, though primarily in client relations rather than mechanical work. Still, he'd picked up enough to be useful. "Fine," Olivia conceded. "Meet me at Ruby's Diner in an hour. You're buying lunch to make up for the mud bath." Inside the law office, Olivia's meeting confirmed her suspicions. The lawyer explained that Thorne Industries had increased their offer yet again, and rumors circulated about eminent domain proceedings if the region approved the development plan. "They want to turn this whole area into a playground for the rich," Olivia fumed, pacing across the worn carpet. "My family has worked this land for generations. It's not just about money." An hour later at Ruby's Diner, Julian watched with amusement as Olivia demolished a towering burger while outlining her vision for expanding the farm's organic operation. He found himself genuinely interested, a rarity in his world of calculated conversations. "What brings you to Oak Ridge anyway?" Olivia finally asked, fixing those perceptive hazel eyes on him. Julian smoothly delivered his rehearsed backstory. "I run a small tech company. Needed some time away from screens to think about our next product line. Rural inspiration and all that." "So you're hiding out," Olivia translated. "From what? Divorce? Scandal? Hostile takeover?" Julian nearly choked on his coffee. Her directness was both refreshing and unsettling. "Nothing so dramatic," he recovered. "Just seeking perspective." After lunch, they returned to Olivia's truck. To her surprise, Julian removed his expensive jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and competently diagnosed the issue with her radiator. As they worked side by side, Julian found himself forgetting about Thorne Vista and billion-dollar deals. There was something grounding about Olivia's presence, her authenticity a stark contrast to the people who typically surrounded him. "You should come see the farm," Olivia suggested casually as they finished the repair. "Dad loves visitors, and you look like you could use some real country air. Not just the sanitized version from the inn." Julian hesitated, knowing he should maintain professional distance. Getting personally involved with Olivia complicated his strategy. Yet he heard himself saying, "I'd like that." The Miller farm was everything Julian had expected from satellite. Images and survey reports. 175 acres of prime agricultural land with a charming if somewhat weathered farmhouse. What the data hadn't conveyed was the soul of the place, the way sunlight dappled through ancient oak trees, or how the evening breeze carried the scent of apple blossoms from the small orchard. Edward Miller, Olivia's father, greeted Julian from his wheelchair on the porch with surprising vigor, his handshake firm despite his physical limitations. Over a home-cooked dinner that put Julian's usual Michelin-starred meals to shame, Edward shared stories of the farm's history, his eyes lighting up as he described innovations his grandfather had pioneered. "This whole valley used to be family farms," Edward explained. "Now we're one of the last holdouts. Some corporation keeps trying to buy us out. Thorne something or other." Julian felt a twist of guilt in his stomach as he met Olivia's eyes across the table. "What would you do?" Julian asked carefully. "If you could get enough money to start over somewhere else." Edward's expression grew serious. "This isn't just land, son. It's our heritage, our future. Olivia's developed farming techniques here that could revolutionize sustainable agriculture. Some things matter more than money." Later, as Julian prepared to leave, Olivia walked him to his car under a canopy of stars impossibly bright compared to the city skies he knew. "Thanks for fixing the truck," she said. "You're not entirely what I expected." Julian felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest. "Neither are you." As he drove back to the inn, Julian realized with growing alarm that for the first time in his career he was questioning one of his projects. Not because of environmental concerns or regulatory hurdles, those could be managed with enough money and influence, but because of the human cost, because of Olivia. What Julian didn't know was that after he left, Olivia opened her laptop and pulled up the Thorn Industries website, studying the familiar face of the CEO she'd spent the day with. Her plan to keep her enemy close was working perfectly, though the unexpected flutter in her heart whenever he smiled was definitely not part of the strategy. Over the next 5 days, Julian found himself inventing increasingly flimsy excuses to visit the Miller farm. He helped repair a leaky barn roof, assisted with the installation of a new irrigation system, and even learned to drive Olivia's ancient tractor, an experience that left them both doubled over with laughter when he nearly toppled into a drainage ditch. Each evening, Julian returned to his luxury suite at the inn and faced conference calls with his executive team, who were growing impatient for progress on the Oak Ridge acquisition. "The board meeting is in 3 days, Julian," his COO reminded him sharply. "We need to present a complete land acquisition plan or risk losing investor confidence." "I'm making progress," Julian insisted, though his definition of progress had shifted dramatically. The truth was he was falling for Olivia, her passion, her integrity, her vision for the farm's future. For the first time, he found himself questioning whether Thorn Vista was really the best use of this land. Meanwhile, Olivia was fighting an internal battle of her own. Each moment with Julian deepened her attraction to him, yet she couldn't forget who he really was, the man trying to destroy everything she loved. Her plan to keep him close and gather intelligence about Thorn Industries' strategies was becoming complicated by feelings she hadn't anticipated. On Thursday morning, Julian arrived at the farm earlier than usual, finding Olivia in the experimental greenhouse where she was developing drought-resistant crops. "I brought breakfast," he announced, holding up a bag from the local bakery. "And I have a proposition for you." Olivia's heart skipped nervously. "What kind of proposition?" "There's a sustainable agriculture conference in Chicago this weekend," Julian explained. "I have connections that could help you secure funding for your research. Would you consider attending with me?" The genuine enthusiasm in his eyes made Olivia hesitate in her suspicion. Was this another tactic to get her away from the farm, or did he truly want to help? "What about Dad?" she deflected. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, already agreed to stay with him," Julian replied with a smile. She said, and I quote, "It's about time that girl took a break with a handsome gentleman." Olivia laughed despite herself. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "It's what I do," Julian said, a shadow of seriousness crossing his face. That evening, as Olivia packed for Chicago, her father wheeled into her bedroom with a concerned expression. "I recognize him, you know," Edward said quietly. "Julian Thorn. I saw his picture in the business section last month." Olivia froze, then slowly turned to face her father. "You knew?" Edward nodded. "Question is, did you?" "I figured it out after the first day," Olivia admitted. "I thought I could learn his plans, find a way to stop him. And now?" Olivia sank onto her bed. "Now I don't know, Dad. He's different than I expected. When he talks about my research, he actually listens, actually cares. I think." "You think he's falling for you," Edward finished gently. "And you for him." "Doesn't matter," Olivia said firmly. "He still wants our land." Edward reached for his daughter's hand. "People can change, Liv. Even billionaires." Meanwhile, Julian was in his suite at the inn, staring at architectural renderings of Thorn Vista spread across his desk. The sleek modern structures looked jarringly out of place superimposed on the rolling countryside he'd come to appreciate. One rendering showed a luxury spa precisely where the Miller's apple orchard stood. His phone buzzed with a text from his lead attorney. "Eminent domain proceedings ready to file Monday if necessary. Board expects resolution." Julian closed his eyes, the weight of his deception crushing down on him. He'd come to Oak Ridge to manipulate and conquer. Instead, he'd discovered something he never expected to find, a connection that felt more valuable than any business deal. In Chicago, Julian and Olivia moved through the conference like a team, her agricultural expertise complementing his business connections. By the end of the first day, 3 potential investors had expressed serious interest in funding Olivia's research. That night, over dinner at an exclusive rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights, Julian watched Olivia's face glow with excitement as she described her vision for the future. "With this funding, we could transform farming in drought-prone regions," she explained passionately. "It's not just about saving my family's farm, it's about changing agriculture for the better." Julian reached across the table, taking her hand. "You're remarkable, you know that?" The moment stretched between them, electric with possibility. Then Olivia gently withdrew her hand. "Why are you really helping me, Julian? And please don't lie to me anymore." The bustling restaurant seemed to fade away as Julian made his decision. "Let's go somewhere we can talk, privately." In the quiet of a lakeside park, Julian finally told the truth about Thorn Industries, about Thorn Vista, about why he'd come to Oak Ridge. With each admission, he expected Olivia to walk away, but she listened in silence until he finished. "So this was all a strategy," she said finally, her voice painfully calm. "Get close to the stubborn farmer, find her weakness, exploit it." "It started that way," Julian acknowledged, his voice rough with emotion. "But everything changed when I met you, when I saw what your work could mean for sustainable agriculture globally." "And Thorn Vista?" Julian hesitated. "The board votes on Monday. Right now, you're the only thing standing in their way." Olivia's eyes flashed. "No, Julian. You're standing in their way too. You just haven't admitted it to yourself yet." She turned and walked away, leaving Julian alone with the truth he could no longer deny. Some treasures were more precious than profit margins and stock prices. He had 3 days to decide which world he belonged in. Julian spent the flight back to Oak Ridge in silence, his mind racing through scenarios like the business strategist he'd always been. By the time the helicopter touched down, he had the outline of a plan, one that would either save his career or end it, depending on how his board reacted. Olivia, meanwhile, had taken an earlier commercial flight, arriving home with a heaviness in her heart that not even her father's warm welcome could dispel. "He lied to me, Dad," she said that evening, absently stirring her untouched tea. "Everything was a strategy to get our land." Edward studied his daughter's face. "Did he succeed?" Olivia looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "In getting what he came for," Edward clarified. "Did Julian Thorn get what he wanted?" Olivia's throat tightened. "The board votes tomorrow." "That's not what I asked," Edward said gently. Before Olivia could respond, the rumble of vehicles on their gravel driveway drew their attention. Through the window, they watched in astonishment as 3 black SUVs pulled up, followed by Julian's Aston Martin. Julian emerged first, followed by a group of serious-looking men and women in business attire, all carrying tablets and portfolios. "What is this?" Olivia demanded, stepping onto the porch, arms crossed defensively. "The Thorn Industries executive team," Julian replied calmly. "I thought it was time they saw what they're trying to destroy." For the next 2 hours, Julian led his bewildered executives through the Miller farm, highlighting Olivia's innovative techniques and sustainable solutions. He spoke with unexpected passion about drought-resistant crops, water conservation systems, and soil regeneration methods. "This isn't just a farm," he explained, gesturing to the experimental greenhouse. "It's an agricultural research center that could transform farming worldwide, and we're proposing to replace it with luxury condos." The CFO cleared his throat uncomfortably. "The projected return on Thorn Vista is significant," Julian interrupted, "but short-sighted." He unfolded a large paper on the Miller's kitchen table, a completely new set of architectural drawings. "This is the Thorn Agricultural Innovation Center," Julian explained, "a partnership with Miller Farms that preserves this land while creating an incubator for sustainable farming technologies." We provide the capital and global distribution networks. The Millers provide the agricultural expertise. Olivia stared at the plans in disbelief. The farmhouse and fields remained intact, joined by modern research facilities that complemented rather than replaced the existing structures. "You developed this since yesterday?" she asked incredulously. "I didn't sleep much," Julian admitted with a tired smile. The executives exchanged glances. The marketing director spoke first. "Thorn, as a leader in agricultural sustainability, it could position us ahead of the curve on climate adaptation technologies. The PR value alone would be substantial," added another. The CFO remained skeptical. "The profit margins will be lower initially but more sustainable long-term," Julian countered. "And we'll still develop a scaled-down version of Thorn Vista on the western parcel we already acquired. Exclusive eco-conscious luxury residences with farm-to-table amenities from the Innovation Center." By sunset, the executives had departed, conditionally supportive of Julian's vision-pending board approval. As quiet descended on the farm once more, Julian and Olivia walked to the orchard, the setting sun casting long shadows across the grass. "Why did you change your mind?" Olivia asked finally. Julian stopped beneath an apple tree. "I've spent my life building things that look impressive but don't actually matter. Your work here, it matters. It could save lives, preserve resources." He hesitated. "And there's another reason." "What's that?" Olivia asked, though his expression told her everything. "I fell in love with the farmer," Julian admitted, his customary confidence giving way to vulnerability. "She outsmarted me at every turn." Olivia couldn't help but smile. "I knew who you were from the beginning, you know. I planned to manipulate you right back." Julian laughed. "So we both tried to play each other?" "And we both lost," Olivia concluded, stepping closer. "Or maybe we both won," Julian suggested, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. Their kiss beneath the apple trees was like coming home to a place neither had known they were searching for, a perfect balance of strength and surrender. 6 months later, the Thorn Agricultural Innovation Center broke ground, with Olivia as its research director and Julian splitting his time between headquarters in the city and the farm that had changed his definition of success. The orchard, where they'd shared their first kiss, became the site of their wedding the following spring, with Edward proudly walking his daughter down an aisle of wildflowers. Julian's board members mingled with Olivia's farming community neighbors, two worlds, finding unexpected common ground. As Julian and Olivia shared their first dance as husband and wife, Edward raised a toast from his wheelchair, now equipped with solar-powered mobility enhancements developed by Thorn Industries' new sustainable technology division. "To my daughter who never gave up on our land," he proclaimed. "And to my son-in-law, who discovered that the greatest acquisitions in life aren't measured in acres or dollars but in love and purpose." Julian held Olivia close as they danced under the stars, the billionaire who came to conquer, and instead found himself gloriously, wonderfully conquered. Edward Miller lived to see his great-granddaughter born 3 years later, a fierce, intelligent child named Eleanor, who grew up with soil under her fingernails and innovation in her heart, the perfect embodiment of the legacy her parents had built together. The Thorn Agricultural Innovation Center eventually expanded to locations across 5 continents, bringing sustainable farming solutions to regions devastated by climate change. Julian and Olivia divided their time between global initiatives and their beloved farmhouse, proving that sometimes the greatest love stories don't end with riding into the sunset. They begin there. And in boardrooms around the world, the story of how Julian Thorn's greatest business failure led to his greatest personal and professional success became the stuff of legend, proof that sometimes the heart makes better business decisions than the head ever could.
Ethan Blackwood never believed in love. To him, marriage was nothing more than a tool, a way to consolidate power. But when his fiancée, Vanessa Sterling, betrayed him just days before their wedding, he realized marriage could also be a weapon. Vanessa had mocked him. She thought he would be broken, devastated at the sight of her running off with another man. But Ethan wasn't the kind of man to be humiliated so easily. If Vanessa wanted to play games, he would play on his own terms. And Isla Whitmore was the perfect pawn for his revenge. A simple maid with no status, no family name, someone Vanessa had always looked down upon. What better way to get back at her than to marry the one person she deemed beneath her? So, the day after his breakup with Vanessa, Ethan announced his engagement to Isla. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I want you to be my wife." His voice was cold, unyielding. Isla's eyes widened in shock. "Are you joking?" "I never joke." Ethan didn't love Isla. She was nothing more than a means to an end. But what he didn't know was that this decision would change his life forever. The wedding was quick and cold, devoid of love or emotion, nothing more than a business deal. Ethan didn't care if Isla's dress was beautiful, nor did he acknowledge the stunned looks from the guests as she walked down the aisle. To him, this was just another chess move, and Isla was the perfect pawn to drive Vanessa insane. Vanessa was there. She wore an extravagant gown, standing among the guests with a cold smirk. Isla could feel the disdain in her gaze, but it didn't matter, because Ethan didn't even spare his bride a glance. The ceremony was brief, their vows spoken like a script. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan simply took Isla's hand, sliding the ring onto her finger with no warmth, no tenderness. After the ceremony, Isla assumed she would be given her own room, but Ethan suddenly pulled her close, his breath warm against her ear as he whispered, "You'll be sleeping in my bed." Isla froze, her eyes widening in shock. "Why?" Ethan's gaze flickered toward Vanessa, a smirk playing on his lips. "Because she's watching." A pang of realization struck Isla. So this was all just to get back at Vanessa. When they arrived at the Blackwood estate, Isla still struggled to accept the reality that she would have to share a bed with a man who didn't love her. But Ethan didn't care about her feelings. He shrugged off his jacket, leaned back against the bed, and said casually, "Don't overthink this, Isla. This is just an act, and you need to play your role well." Isla clenched her fists, her mind in turmoil. She never thought her life would change so drastically in just one night. Isla couldn't sleep. The room was too large, too unfamiliar, and the man lying beside her was even more unsettling. Ethan Blackwood, her husband by title, yet a complete stranger to her. He lay on his back, one arm draped over his forehead, eyes half closed. But Isla knew he wasn't asleep. After what felt like an eternity, Isla turned onto her side, keeping as much distance from Ethan as possible. As she shifted, the blanket slipped slightly, revealing a faint scar on her shoulder. Ethan's eyes snapped open. It wasn't an ordinary scar. It was thin, slightly raised, as if it had been there for years. In the dim glow of the night, fragments of a forgotten memory resurfaced. A river, a boy struggling against a powerful current, a girl diving in, risking everything to pull him to safety. And then, when he finally opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was blood, trickling from a fresh wound on her shoulder. Ethan's pulse pounded. Slowly, he propped himself up on one elbow, his sharp gaze fixed on Isla. Could she be that girl? But Isla seemed unaware of his sudden change in demeanor. She simply pulled the blanket higher, turning her back to him, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside his mind. Ethan couldn't look away from that scar. He remembered it vividly. The girl who saved him had promised she would never forget him. But when he had returned to find her, she was gone. Could it really be her? Ethan clenched his jaw, his thoughts tangled. He couldn't jump to conclusions just yet. He needed to be sure. Ethan was not a man who easily fixated on things, but ever since their wedding night, he couldn't stop thinking about the scar on Isla's shoulder. He remembered it too well. It was the same injury the girl who had saved him bore all those years ago. But one scar wasn't enough. Ethan needed more proof. So he began paying close attention to Isla, silently observing her every habit, every reaction. And slowly, fragments of lost memories started falling into place. First clue: Isla had a very distinct habit. Whenever she was nervous, she would fiddle with a small silver necklace, turning the pendant between her fingers. Ethan remembered the girl from his past had the same habit, holding on to a similar necklace whenever she was anxious. Second clue: Isla loved nature. One morning, Ethan walked through the garden and saw Isla barefoot on the grass, eyes closed, as if relishing the sensation. The sight hit him like a wave of déjà vu. The girl who had saved him also loved walking barefoot, once saying that it made her feel free. Third clue: Isla reacted strangely when he mentioned the river. During dinner one evening, Ethan casually asked, "Do you like swimming?" Isla froze for a fraction of a second, her eyes flickering with something unreadable before shaking her head. "No, I don't really like water." Ethan stared at her, heart pounding. The girl from his past had almost drowned while saving him. Maybe that fear had stayed with her. Fourth clue: Isla had an unconscious reflex. One night, Ethan accidentally dropped a glass, the sharp sound shattering the quiet air. Isla flinched violently, and by instinct, her hand flew to her left shoulder, where her scar was. Ethan stilled. That was exactly how the girl from his past had reacted when he had asked about her injury. Ethan had no more doubts. Isla was the girl who had once saved his life. But she didn't recognize him. Or maybe she had forgotten everything. Ethan wasn't going to tell her just yet. But the realization consumed him. Every time he looked at Isla, he could no longer see just the maid he married out of revenge. He saw the girl who had once risked everything for him. He wanted to understand why she had ended up here, why she didn't remember him, and most of all, why fate had brought them back together like this. Was it just coincidence? Or had he unknowingly spent his whole life searching for her? Ethan had never believed in fate, but some things were too coincidental to ignore. For weeks, he had watched Isla, gathering every clue to confirm what he already suspected, that she was the girl who had once risked her life to save him. But she didn't remember him, or maybe she had forgotten everything. That night, as Isla was preparing for bed, Ethan spoke up suddenly. "Do you believe in fate?" Isla hesitated. It was the first time Ethan had ever spoken to her like this. There was no coldness, no authority, just quiet contemplation, as if he had been carrying something heavy in his mind. "I've never really thought about it," Isla answered truthfully. Ethan watched her intently, his fingers unconsciously brushing against the scar on her shoulder. Isla tensed, stepping back slightly, but Ethan's gaze never left her. "Do you remember ever saving someone?" His voice was low. Isla frowned. "What are you talking about?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood up, moving closer to her. He locked eyes with her, his voice calm but firm. "Years ago, I fell into a river. I struggled against the freezing current, convinced I was going to die, until a girl jumped in and pulled me out." Isla froze. "She got hurt saving me." Ethan's fingers traced the faint scar on her shoulder. "Right here." The world stood still. Isla's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat as fragments of forgotten memories suddenly rushed back. A river, a terrified boy, a promise. "We've met before." Ethan's voice was rough. "You saved me, and I promised I'd marry you." Isla took a shaky step back, clutching the fabric of her nightgown. "No, that can't be." Ethan didn't push her. He simply watched, letting her piece together the memories herself. And then Isla remembered. She remembered the boy with piercing blue eyes, remembered that cold afternoon when she had dragged him onto the riverbank, trembling from the icy water. She remembered how he had stared at her, gratitude shining in his gaze. And she remembered his promise. "One day, when I grow up, I'll marry you." Isla raised a hand to her mouth, her heart pounding. The boy she had once saved was now the man she had married. Ethan took a deep breath, a rare softness flickering in his eyes. "I don't know why fate brought us back together like this, but I do know one thing." He paused, his gaze steady. "I'm not going to lose you again." Isla couldn't sleep. The entire night she lay awake, her mind spinning with memories that had just resurfaced. Ethan was the boy she had saved all those years ago, the boy with deep blue eyes, the one who had held onto her hand on the riverbank, innocently promising to marry her someday. She had forgotten. She had truly forgotten that promise. But Ethan hadn't. He had remembered. He had even searched for her. Isla gripped the blanket tightly, her emotions tangled. Ethan had always been a mystery to her. Since the day they married, he had never shown his true emotions, never looked at her as a real wife. So why now, when she looked at him, did everything suddenly feel different? In the days that followed, Isla started to change. She tried to keep her distance from Ethan, but the more she avoided him, the more she found herself drawn to him. She began noticing the little things about him, the way he drank his coffee black but always left a sugar cube untouched on the saucer, the way his fingers idly tapped against the table when he was deep in thought, the way his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. Their private moments started to feel different, like the way Ethan's hand would gently rest on her back while guiding her through a crowd, or the way his gaze stayed on her just a second too long. She no longer saw him as cold and distant. Ethan no longer kept his walls up, as if he was patiently waiting for her to realize something. But what unsettled Isla the most was herself. Why did her heart race whenever Ethan was near? Why did she feel an inexplicable disappointment when he wasn't at breakfast? Why did his gaze make her feel things she never expected to? One late night, Isla sat by the window, staring at the distant city lights, lost in thought. She had believed this marriage was just an act, a way for Ethan to spite Vanessa, a contract devoid of real emotions. But now, Isla wasn't so sure. Ethan never pushed her. He never demanded she feel anything for him. But his patience, his quiet kindness, the way he looked at her, it was impossible to ignore. And that terrified her. Falling in love meant being vulnerable. It meant risking heartbreak. Isla had spent years surviving, keeping her heart guarded. She had convinced herself that love wasn't meant for people like her, that she was only here because of circumstance. But every time Ethan looked at her, every time his fingers brushed against hers, she felt something shift. Maybe, just maybe, she wanted to stay. In the days that followed, something shifted between Isla and Ethan. She no longer avoided his gaze, and Ethan, instead of keeping his distance, began creating moments of closeness between them. They were no longer just two people bound by a marriage of convenience. In the mornings, Isla would find a cup of tea waiting for her, the exact kind she liked. Ethan never mentioned it, but she knew it was him. At events, Ethan always rested a hand on the small of her back, light yet firm, a silent reassurance that she wasn't alone. Their conversations became effortless. Isla no longer felt the need to be guarded around him. Instead, Ethan always listened, as if every word she spoke mattered to him. And then, there were moments that made Isla realize something had changed. One evening, she stepped out onto the balcony for some fresh air, only to find Ethan already there. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice deep and soothing in the quiet night. Isla shook her head. They stood side by side, saying nothing, just gazing out at the city below. Yet there was something peaceful about the silence between them, something that no longer felt like distance, but comfort. A cool breeze swept through, making Isla shiver. Before she could react, Ethan shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She glanced up, startled by the simple but intimate gesture. Ethan said nothing, but his eyes, the way he looked at her, they spoke louder than words ever could. Slowly, Isla began to understand. She no longer avoided him. She no longer denied the emotions growing inside her. She had once thought this marriage was a mistake. But now, Isla began to wonder, was it fate that had brought her back to Ethan? And now she had a choice to make. Isla spent the entire night thinking. She knew she couldn't keep running anymore. Ethan had said the words she had been too afraid to admit. She wasn't staying because of the past. She wasn't staying because of a childhood promise. She was staying because of him. But if Isla truly accepted that, if she truly let herself love again, what would it mean for her? The next morning, Isla went looking for Ethan. He was standing on the balcony, gazing out at the city. The golden morning light cast a glow over him, making him look both strong and lonely at the same time. She took a deep breath, then stepped beside him. He turned, his eyes flickering with surprise, perhaps because this was the first time Isla had ever sought him out on her own. "You were right," Isla said softly. "I'm not staying because of the past." Ethan said nothing. He just watched her, waiting. Isla clenched her hands. She had never confessed something like this before. But if she didn't say it now, she would regret it forever. "I love you." The words left Isla's lips before she could stop them. And in that moment, everything stilled. Ethan froze. His sharp blue eyes locked onto hers, unreadable, as if he wasn't sure if he had imagined it. Isla's heart pounded. She had spent so long convincing herself this wasn't real, that this wasn't love, but saying it out loud? It felt like the most honest thing she had ever done. "What did you say?" Ethan's voice was rough, uncertain in a way Isla had never heard before. She swallowed hard, took a shaky breath, and then smiled. "I love you, Ethan." This time, there was no hesitation. No obligation, no past debts, just pure, undeniable love. Ethan didn't wait another second. He pulled Isla into his arms, holding her tight. "I've been waiting so long to hear you say that." His voice was rough, filled with emotion, as if he had just let go of a weight he had carried for too long. Isla laughed softly, wrapping her arms around him. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid anymore. She had chosen to stay. For love. And this time, Ethan would never let her go again. What would you do if life gave you wealth, status, and success, but left you longing for the one thing that truly matters? This is the story of Marcus Gray, a wealthy but deeply lonely entrepreneur, and Hannah Reed, a resilient single mother fighting to provide for her young son Liam. At 38, Marcus had everything most people dream of: a sprawling mansion, luxury cars, and a business empire that made him a household name. But beneath the surface of his polished life, there was an emptiness he couldn't escape. Marcus had a secret he carried with him every day: he couldn't have children. The judgmental remarks from his family and the silent pity in their eyes ate away at him, making him question his worth as a man. Meanwhile, Hannah was living a completely different life. Working tirelessly as a waitress in a small cafe, she struggled to make ends meet. Her only motivation was her 6-year-old son, Liam, whose bright smile gave her strength through even the hardest days. Two lives from opposite worlds collided one fateful morning when Marcus, seeking solace from his overwhelming thoughts, stumbled into Hannah's cafe. How could a woman like Hannah, grounded in love and resilience, change the life of a man like Marcus, burdened by loneliness and self-doubt? Their meeting was just the beginning of a story that would challenge everything they believed about themselves and each other. Marcus Gray lived in a sprawling mansion where every corner radiated luxury and sophistication. The towering walls not only protected his wealth, but also imprisoned his loneliness. On the surface, Marcus was a successful entrepreneur with an empire worth millions, but deep inside, he felt like an empty shell. He carried a painful secret: he couldn't have children. This truth weighed heavily on him, especially during family gatherings. The cruel remarks from relatives, "A man like you without children? What a waste," were like daggers to his soul. Each comment forced him to smile through the pain, masking the storm of inadequacy brewing within. At night, alone in his sprawling mansion, Marcus often found himself staring at empty hallways, wondering if all his success meant anything without a family to share it with. One morning, overwhelmed by his thoughts, Marcus decided to escape the suffocating confines of his mansion. He drove aimlessly, seeking relief from the unspoken pressures that had become too much to bear. As he wandered through quiet suburban streets, his eyes caught sight of a small cafe he had never noticed before. Something about the simplicity of the place compelled him to stop. The cafe's atmosphere was a stark contrast to the cold grandeur of his mansion. It was warm and welcoming, filled with the comforting hum of chatter and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Behind the counter stood Hannah Reed, a woman with tired eyes, but an undeniable warmth in her smile. She moved gracefully, balancing trays and attending to customers with a kindness that seemed to radiate from within. Marcus couldn't help but watch her, drawn to her unpretentious charm. In that moment, something shifted in Marcus. The oppressive weight of his loneliness began to lift, replaced by a quiet curiosity about the woman before him. Hannah embodied a kind of authenticity he hadn't seen in years. As he sat in the cafe, observing Hannah's every move, Marcus realized how hollow his life truly felt. Despite all his wealth and success, he lacked the one thing he craved most: a genuine connection. Meeting Hannah wasn't just a chance encounter. It was the beginning of a journey that would force him to confront his own vulnerabilities and question everything he thought he knew about himself. As Marcus stepped into the cafe, he chose a small table near the window, where the sunlight softened the heaviness in his chest. His eyes followed Hannah as she moved gracefully between the tables, attending to customers with a dedication and gentleness that felt almost magnetic. When Hannah approached his table, she greeted him with a polite smile. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" Marcus, accustomed to commanding attention and deference, replied with an air of authority. "A black coffee, but make sure it's not watered down." Hannah raised an eyebrow, unfazed by his tone. "Of course. Just so you know, black coffee doesn't get watered down if brewed correctly." "Perhaps you mean an espresso?" Her straightforward response caught Marcus off guard. He wasn't used to being corrected, but instead of irritation, he felt something he hadn't in years: amusement. "Yes, an espresso," he said, nodding. When Hannah walked away, Marcus found himself studying her. Her calm confidence and refusal to be intimidated by his presence were unlike anything he had encountered before. It was as though she held up a mirror to him, reflecting the flaws and insecurities he had long tried to bury. When she returned with the coffee, Marcus couldn't resist asking, "How long have you been working here?" "Long enough to know that everyone has their own story, and sometimes a simple cup of coffee can make their day better," Hannah replied, her gaze steady but kind. Her words struck a deep chord in Marcus. She wasn't like the people who usually surrounded him, eager to please or gain his favor. There was an honesty and resilience about her that intrigued him. That morning left a lasting impression on Marcus. As he walked out of the cafe, he felt a new emotion stirring within him: curiosity. He couldn't shake the thought of Hannah from his mind. An idea began to take shape. He would offer her a job at his mansion, under the pretense of needing help with organization and upkeep. But in truth, Marcus wanted to get closer to her, to learn more about the woman who, in such a short time, had made him question everything he thought he knew about life and himself. The next evening, Hannah was wiping down the last tables at the cafe when Marcus walked in again. This time he seemed different, less rushed, more contemplative. "Can we talk for a moment?" Marcus asked, his voice softer than before. Hannah hesitated, drying her hands on her apron before sitting down across from him. "Sure, what's on your mind?" Marcus paused, carefully choosing his words. "I'd like to offer you a job. I know this might sound unusual, but I'd like to invite you to work at my home." "At your home?" Hannah blinked, surprised by his directness. "I don't even know you. What would I even do there?" "I need someone to help manage and organize the mansion," Marcus explained, leaning in slightly. "And of course, the pay would be significantly higher than what you earn here." Hannah sat quietly, weighing his words. As a single mother, she had always dreamed of giving her son Liam a better life. This could be the opportunity she had been waiting for, but she still felt unsure about trusting Marcus. Finally, she nodded slowly, though a nervous flutter remained in her chest. "All right, I'll take the job. But I hope you know I have no experience managing a mansion. I'll do my best." Marcus exhaled in relief, a small smile crossing his face. "I believe in you, Hannah. Thank you for giving me this chance." The next day, Hannah nervously boarded the bus, clutching the strap of her bag as she stared out the window. The enormous mansion came into view, and she couldn't help but feel small in its shadow. But then she thought of Liam, remembering the way his face lit up when she told him bedtime stories. This job was for him, and that gave her strength. At the mansion, Hannah was greeted by Clara, the longtime housekeeper. Clara's eyes scanned her from head to toe with a look that mixed suspicion and superiority. "Oh, so you must be the new helper," Clara said, her tone laced with doubt. "Yes, I'm Hannah," she replied, offering a tentative smile. "I'm here to help wherever I'm needed." Clara maintained her stern demeanor. "Well, young lady, we have strict rules here. I hope you won't disrupt how this house operates." Hannah met Clara's gaze, her own eyes shining with quiet determination. "I'll do my best." From his office upstairs, Marcus watched the interaction from a slightly open window. Seeing Hannah hold her ground against Clara's rigidity deepened his admiration for her. But he kept his distance, hiding the growing curiosity and emotion stirring within him. In her first few days at the mansion, Hannah worked tirelessly to prove herself. She cleaned every corner with precision, even under Clara's critical gaze. Despite her best efforts, Clara always found faults. "Everything must be perfect here," Clara would say, pointing out minor mistakes. "I'm not sure you're capable of keeping up with our standards." Hannah refused to let Clara's remarks bring her down. She remained silent, letting her dedication speak for itself. But the challenges didn't stop at her work. Clara began spreading malicious rumors about Hannah, targeting both the staff and Marcus. "Mr. Marcus," Clara said one afternoon as she entered his office, "that new girl, I'm not sure she's here for the right reasons. She seems like she's trying to win your favor for her own benefit." Marcus frowned but didn't reply. Though doubt started to creep into his mind, he continued to quietly observe Hannah. Amidst the rumors and tension, an unspoken bond began to form between Marcus and Hannah. He found himself drawn to her strength and the kindness she showed to everyone around her, especially Lucas. One afternoon, as Hannah tended to the garden, Marcus approached her. He paused, unsure why he felt compelled to talk. "These flowers look much better with your care," he said, trying to start a conversation. Hannah looked up, surprised by his compliment. "I'm just doing what I can. It's part of my job." Marcus smiled softly. "Sometimes, doing things for others is the most meaningful work. I can see Liam really enjoys your company." Hannah felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "I like him too. He reminds me of my own son, Liam." Moments like these made Marcus begin to imagine a different future, a life where Hannah and Liam could be his family. However, Clara had no intention of letting things progress smoothly. She intensified her efforts, spreading rumors that Hannah was only trying to manipulate Marcus for her own gain. Her toxic words created a tense atmosphere within the mansion. Despite the challenges, Marcus and Hannah found comfort in each other. Sometimes it was just a nod or a fleeting smile, but it was enough to build a connection that neither of them could deny. Clara wasn't ready to abandon her schemes. One morning, as Hannah prepared breakfast in the kitchen, she overheard hushed voices from two staff members. "Did you hear? They say she's pregnant, and it's not Mr. Marcus's child," one whispered dramatically. "Really? Do you think Mr. Marcus would believe that?" the other replied with a sly laugh. Hannah froze. She immediately knew only Clara could be behind such vile rumors. Determined to confront the issue, Hannah entered the living room where Marcus sat, reviewing some documents. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady, but her eyes betrayed her frustration. Marcus looked up, his expression weary. "About what?" "Clara's spreading rumors that I'm pregnant with another man's child," Hannah said, anger lacing her words. "Do you actually believe that?" Marcus hesitated for a moment before furrowing his brow. "I don't know what to think, Hannah. This house is filled with whispers, and I can't just ignore them." Hannah stared at him, her disappointment growing. "Do you honestly think I could do something like that? I'm not the person Clara is trying to paint me as. I'm here for my job and my son Liam, not to manipulate you." Marcus sighed, his gaze uncertain. "Hannah, I can't have children. If you're pregnant, I know it's not mine." His words hit her like a blow. Tears welled in Hannah's eyes as she looked at him, disbelief and pain evident on her face. "You truly don't trust me, do you? I've worked so hard to prove myself, but you still choose to believe Clara over me." The weight of mistrust was too much to bear. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself before speaking. "I can't stay here anymore, Marcus. I need to protect my son and myself. I refuse to live in a house where I'm doubted and humiliated." Marcus's face fell, his eyes filling with regret. "You're leaving? You're not giving me any chance to make this right?" "What chance, Marcus?" Hannah replied, tears streaming down her face. "You don't believe in me. You've let Clara's lies control you. I can't stay." Grabbing Liam's hand, Hannah walked out of the mansion, leaving Marcus standing in stunned silence. Her heart felt heavy, but she knew she had to do what was best for herself and her son. As Hannah walked out, Marcus stood frozen in silence, the weight of her words crushing him. The emptiness of the mansion echoed louder than ever. Hours later, he sat in his office, his mind clouded with regret. "How could I have trusted Clara over Hannah?" he murmured, shame filling every part of him. Memories of Hannah's smile and her gentle care for Liam played in his mind, reminding him of what he had lost. Determined to make things right, Marcus stormed into Clara's office with a resolute expression. "Clara, I know exactly what you've done," he said coldly. "You spread lies about Hannah. You destroyed the family I could have had." Clara, initially composed, began to falter under his piercing gaze. "I was just trying to protect you, Marcus. She's not good enough for you." "Protect me? No, you were trying to control me." "Clara, I don't need your help anymore. You're fired, effective immediately," Marcus declared firmly. Clara's face twisted in disbelief, but Marcus was unyielding. As she left, he realized that firing her wasn't enough to fix what had happened. He needed to find Hannah, apologize, and prove that he had changed. Marcus began his search, reaching out to friends and colleagues who might know where she had gone. Finally, he learned that Hannah was living in a small town a few hours away from the mansion. When he arrived, Marcus spotted her through the window of a modest clothing store. She was arranging shirts on a rack, her expression calm but distant. "Hannah?" he called out, his voice filled with urgency. Hannah looked up, her eyes wide with surprise, but also guarded. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" she asked, her tone sharp but tinged with sadness. "I came to apologize. I was wrong. Clara manipulated everything and I let it drive you away," he said, each word carrying the weight of his sincerity. Hannah stood there, her emotions torn between hurt and hope. This time, however, the sincerity in Marcus's eyes gave her pause. "You hurt me, Marcus. Your doubt made me feel unworthy," Hannah said, her voice trembling. "I know, and I'll do everything to make it right," Marcus replied, stepping closer. "Hannah, I don't want to lose you and Liam. You're the family I've never had. I can't imagine life without you." Hannah remained silent, searching his face. She saw a changed man, no longer cold and distant, but someone willing to fight for the people he loved. "We'll start over, Marcus," she said after a long moment. "But you have to prove that you've truly changed. Not just for me, but for Liam too." Marcus smiled, tears shimmering in his eyes as relief and hope washed over him. He slowly dropped to one knee, his voice trembling with emotion as he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Hannah, I've made mistakes, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You've shown me what it means to truly love and care. Marry me and let's build the family we both deserve." Hannah gasped, tears welling in her eyes. She knew this wasn't just a gesture, it was a promise. "Yes, I will," she whispered. Life at the mansion transformed completely. Marcus became a devoted father figure to Liam, working with Hannah to create a warm, loving environment. But both of them yearned for one more thing. They wanted to expand their family. They sought medical assistance. Initially, their attempts at IVF were unsuccessful, leaving them both heartbroken. Yet Marcus stood by Hannah every step of the way, holding her hand during doctor visits and encouraging her to keep faith. "We'll get through this, Hannah. You're strong, and I'll always be here," Marcus reassured her after another failed attempt. Finally, after months of heartbreak and waiting, a miracle happened. Early one morning, Hannah stood in the bathroom, her hands trembling as she held the pregnancy test. Her breath caught in her throat as two faint lines began to appear. Tears filled her eyes, disbelief and joy flooding her all at once. "Marcus!" she called out, her voice shaky. When he rushed in, concern written all over his face, she held up the test with a radiant smile. "Being pregnant, we're having a baby." Marcus froze, then pulled her into a tight embrace. "Really? We did it." Their joy doubled when, at the next appointment, the doctor revealed Hannah was carrying twins, 2 baby girls. The news filled their home with excitement as they prepared to welcome their little angels. Marcus and Hannah proved that love and patience could overcome any challenge. Liam was thrilled to become a big brother, and the once cold mansion became a lively, loving home filled with laughter. Happiness didn't come easily, but for Marcus and Hannah, it was always worth the fight. Emma Carter stood in front of the hospital bathroom mirror, adjusting her pale blue scrubs for the third time that morning. Her reflection revealed the exhaustion she tried so hard to mask, dark circles under her eyes, a slight slump to her shoulders. Yet, beneath the fatigue was an unshakable resolve. She had spent another sleepless night working double shifts, not because she had to, but because she chose to. For Lily, her younger sister, and her dreams of a better future. At 30, Emma had mastered the art of hiding exhaustion behind a composed smile. She pulled her dark brown hair into a neat bun, following Memorial City Hospital's strict dress code, and took a deep breath. Her tiny apartment in the older part of town and the 12-year-old sedan parked outside told the story of a woman who had sacrificed comfort for responsibility. Emma's job as a nurse wasn't just her career, it was her calling. Growing up in a working-class family had taught her resilience and the value of compassion, lessons she carried with her every day. As Emma joined the morning briefing, the usual announcements were made, but the room shifted when Dr. Allison Harper, the head nurse, mentioned a new patient. "We've been assigned Lucas Bennett," Dr. Harper said, her tone carrying an edge of excitement and skepticism. "Yes, the Lucas Bennett. He was admitted last night after a skiing accident. Temporarily paralyzed. He'll need around-the-clock care. Any volunteers?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew Lucas, a tech mogul whose face had graced magazine covers. Whispers spread, tinged with awe and envy. Emma hesitated. Taking this case would mean more scrutiny, more pressure. But it also meant extra pay, something she desperately needed. "I'll do it," she said quietly. Dr. Harper raised an eyebrow. "Interesting choice, Emma. I'm sure Mr. Bennett is used to top-tier service." Emma straightened her shoulders. "Care is about dignity, not status," she replied firmly, though she felt the weight of the room's judgment pressing against her. Emma stepped into room 403, where Lucas Bennett was being cared for. The morning light streamed through the window, casting dappled shadows across the stark white walls. State-of-the-art medical equipment filled the room, each piece worth more than her annual salary. Lucas lay motionless on the bed, his muscular frame at odds with the loose hospital gown. His square jaw, shadowed with stubble, caught Emma off guard. He didn't match her mental image of a tech CEO. She had expected soft hands, accustomed to keyboards. Instead, his hands were rough, marked with calluses that hinted at hard work. "Mr. Bennett," Emma spoke up, approaching to check his vitals. "I'm Emma Carter, your primary nurse." Lucas's eyes slowly opened, their piercing blue gaze cutting through the haze of medication. "Call me Lucas," he said, his voice rough and hesitant, like a man grappling with the unfamiliar weight of vulnerability. "Looks like I'll need your help with everything." Emma noticed the flicker of shame in his eyes, a fleeting yet raw reflection of a man who had always been in control, now forced to depend on others. She softened her tone, her professionalism tinged with quiet empathy. "That's what I'm here for," she replied, her voice steady, "and you'll be back on your feet before you know it." Their exchange was interrupted by a knock. Ben, the orderly, swaggered in with a smug grin. "Heard you volunteered for the special assignment with the millionaire. Climbing the corporate ladder with some extra care, huh?" he sneered. Lucas's jaw tightened, but Emma kept her expression neutral. "I'm here to do my job," she said, continuing to check Lucas's vitals. Ben left, but Lucas's discontent lingered. "I can request another nurse," he said quietly. Emma met his gaze firmly. "Lucas, I've been a nurse for over 10 years. I've cared for people at their most vulnerable. There's nothing common about providing care with dignity. Now, shall we discuss your treatment plan?" Something shifted in Lucas's expression. Surprise, perhaps recognition. Neither of them realized that this moment would change both of their lives forever. The first 3 days of caring for Lucas Bennett passed in a whirlwind of routines. Emma always arrived early, reviewing his charts and preparing everything before the rest of the staff started their shifts. It offered the privacy she knew Lucas valued as he adjusted to his temporary condition. While Lucas gradually came to terms with his dependence, his frustration often surfaced in sharp remarks. "A creative genius who now can't even pour his own glass of water," he said one afternoon, his tone tinged with bitterness. Emma, remaining calm, replied while checking his vitals, Your body is healing. Sometimes patience is its own kind of strength." Outside his room, the gossip continued to ripple through the corridors. "Bet she's aiming for the Mrs. Millionaire title," Ben joked during a break, drawing laughter from a few others. Dr. Harper nearby smirked subtly but said nothing. Lucas wasn't oblivious to the whispers. One morning, as Emma walked in with a tray of medications, he looked at her with hesitation. "What are they saying about you out there?" he asked, his voice tinged with guilt. Emma paused, setting the tray down. "What they say doesn't matter," she replied. "What matters is that I know why I'm here." Lucas held her gaze for a long moment, the sharpness in his blue eyes softening. He was beginning to see that Emma wasn't just a skilled nurse, but also someone with unwavering determination and self-respect. One quiet evening, with most of the staff gone, Emma was finishing Lucas's physical therapy exercises. The warm glow of the room's lighting made the space feel more intimate. Lucas broke the silence, his voice softer than usual. "Did you always want to be a nurse?" Emma paused, adjusting the position of his leg before replying. "Not at first," she admitted. "I grew up in a struggling family. I saw loved ones not get the care they deserved because they couldn't afford it. It changed how I viewed the world." Lucas studied her thoughtfully. "I understand that feeling," he said. "Before my company, I was a broke college kid drowning in debt, working out of a rundown garage. People only see the success, not the nights I slept on the cold floor." Emma, surprised, sat down next to him. "I thought you were someone who'd never had to fight for anything." "And I thought you were someone who never let fear hold you back," Lucas replied, his gaze both inquisitive and filled with respect. They both laughed lightly, a rare sense of connection forming between them. In that moment, they weren't just nurse and patient, but two people sharing old scars and a belief that hardships could become motivation. "Thank you," Lucas said, his tone sincere. "For what?" Emma asked. "For not seeing me as just some helpless millionaire patient." Lucas began making significant strides in his recovery. Small movements in his legs turned into more deliberate actions with Emma's support. Yet the gossip around the hospital persisted. One morning, as Emma prepared Lucas's breakfast, she overheard Ben and a group of staff laughing just outside the door. "She's definitely aiming for a marriage contract now," Ben joked loudly, making Emma pause, a pang of hurt crossing her face. When she entered Lucas's room, he immediately noticed the tension in her expression. "They're saying things again, aren't they?" he asked, his eyes flashing with anger. Emma shook her head. "It doesn't matter. I'm here to do my job." Lucas studied her for a long moment before replying. "No one should be treated like this, especially not someone who's dedicated to helping others. I won't let it continue." The next morning, during a hospital-wide meeting, Lucas appeared in his wheelchair, his presence commanding despite his seated position. A hush fell over the room as he cleared his throat, his eyes scanning the room with quiet authority. "I have something to say," he began, his voice steady and deliberate. Lucas turned his gaze toward Dr. Harper, then swept it across the assembled staff. "I've heard every whisper, every rumor. I've seen how you've treated Emma, one of the most dedicated and skilled nurses I've ever met. Without her, I wouldn't be standing here today." His tone sharpened, cutting through the tension in the room like a blade. "Without her, I wouldn't have made the progress I have," Lucas said firmly. "And if this is how you treat your most dedicated staff, I'll reconsider any future collaborations with this hospital." Emma stood quietly in the back, her eyes moist but not letting tears fall. Lucas's words were more than just a defense. They were a declaration of her worth. After the meeting, when they were alone in the room, Lucas smiled at her. "Thank you for trusting me," he said. Emma replied, her voice soft but filled with emotion, "And thank you for believing in me." Weeks later, Lucas had made remarkable strides in his recovery. He could stand with minimal assistance and had begun taking short, independent steps in the physical therapy room. Each time he progressed, Emma's pride was evident in her warm, encouraging smile. One evening, Lucas asked Emma to accompany him to the hospital garden, a tranquil spot he had come to appreciate during his treatment. Emma agreed, pushing his wheelchair along the shaded path. "Emma," Lucas began, his voice deeper and more serious than usual, "you've done more for me than anyone else, not just for my body, but for my spirit." Emma stopped the wheelchair, sitting down beside him. "You've accomplished so much on your own. I was just here to support you." Lucas shook his head, his eyes filled with emotion. "No, you're the one person who saw me not as a patient or a wealthy man, but simply as a human being." Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Opening it, he revealed a simple but elegant ring. "I don't just want to thank you, Emma," Lucas began, his voice trembling slightly as he reached for her hand. "You've shown me a strength I didn't know I needed, a kindness that's changed me forever. You've stood by me at my lowest, and I can't imagine facing life without you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, sharing every hardship and every joy. Will you marry me?" Emma froze, staring at Lucas for what felt like an eternity. Finally, her face broke into a radiant smile, her eyes shining with happiness. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. Lucas stood, taking a step toward Emma on his own, and embraced her tightly. Their wedding wasn't just a promise of a joyful future, but a testament to the strength of a bond forged through trials and perseverance. The small hospital garden, once a sanctuary for Lucas during his most challenging days, now bloomed with fresh flowers and warm sunlight. Rows of chairs were neatly arranged, filled with close friends and family of Emma and Lucas, along with a few of their colleagues from the hospital. Emma walked down the aisle, draped in an elegant white gown, her natural beauty glowing with happiness. Lucas, now fully recovered, stood waiting at the end of the aisle, his smile gentle yet full of pride. "I once thought I had everything," Lucas said during their vows. "But you've taught me that life only truly matters when you have someone to share it with." Emma smiled, her voice trembling with emotion. "I once believed I was just a nurse, someone working behind the scenes. But you showed me that the small things I do can change someone's life." The ceremony ended with applause, laughter, and tears of joy. It wasn't just the start of a new life together, but a declaration that great challenges often lead to the most beautiful outcomes. A few weeks later, Emma officially joined the healthcare technology project Lucas had founded, taking on a key role in developing patient care protocols. The pair were not just life partners, but also collaborators, building a system of care grounded in empathy and dignity. Sitting in her new office, her wedding ring catching the light, Emma smiled as she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The cruel whispers and challenges at the hospital were now a distant memory. Ahead of her lay a promising future with the man she loved. After their wedding, Emma and Lucas dove into developing the Dignity System healthcare project with unwavering dedication. The software they co-designed not only tracked physical recovery, but also measured patients' mental and emotional progress. Emma brought all her experience to the project, drawing on the smallest lessons from her daily care routines. The little things, a smile, a word of encouragement, a gentle touch to reassure, don't just help patients heal, they help them feel valued, Emma explained during a presentation at a major healthcare conference. Lucas, now back as CEO, frequently praised Emma's contributions. He often recounted the story of how she cared for him during his most difficult days, moving audiences and partners alike. Though their work kept them busy, Emma and Lucas always made time to cherish the simple joys of life. One evening, after wrapping up a hectic workday, they sat together at their cozy kitchen table, laughing over memories of their first meeting. "Did you ever think life would turn out like this?" Emma asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "No," Lucas replied, taking her hand. "But I knew from the moment you walked into that hospital room, my life would never be the same." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She hadn't just found love. She had built a legacy that would change the lives of thousands of patients around the world. Years after the Dignity System was widely implemented, Emma and Lucas not only found professional success, but also received unexpected personal news. Emma was pregnant. The revelation that they were expecting twins, a boy and a girl, brought immeasurable excitement and joy. Lucas, once accustomed to managing large-scale projects, now spent hours reading parenting books and preparing for his new role as a father. On a crisp spring morning, Emma gave birth to 2 healthy babies at the same hospital where she and Lucas had first met. Lucas held her hand tightly as they saw their children for the first time. Ethan, with Lucas's piercing blue eyes, and Lily with Emma's gentle smile. "We created something miraculous," Lucas whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he cradled Ethan close to his chest. His gaze flickered to Emma, who was gently rocking Lily, her face radiant despite the exhaustion of labor. "I never thought I'd be here, holding this moment with you," he added softly, his voice breaking as he kissed Ethan's forehead. Emma smiled, watching Lucas hold their son while she gently rocked Lily in her arms. "Not just miraculous," she replied, "but the start of something new." A few weeks later, as the family settled into life with their newborns, Emma received a letter from the United Nations. They wanted to honor the dignity system as a global innovation and invited Emma to speak at the General Assembly. Lucas, rocking Ethan to sleep in his arms, chuckled softly. "I think our kids will be proud of what their parents have accomplished." Emma nodded, her eyes filled with joy and hope. "And I think we've not only changed the world for patients, but also for our children." Their little family stepped into a new chapter, pioneers in healthcare and parents to a promising pair of twins, symbolizing a future filled with love and compassion.